Okay, guys, let's catch up with our conversation from quality management and make sure we address lean techniques in specific. And this will add on to our conversation about TQM and Six Sigma. Now, when we think of lean techniques, this is an approach that's been around for a long, long time and actually is thought to have originated with Henry Ford's work back when the assembly line was put together and Ford was trying to standardize production through that assembly line process. It really took hold, though, as an outgrowth of what's known as the Toyota way in late 70s into the 80s, where the process was developed to try and allow Japanese automobile manufacturers to get just as efficient as possible in their competition with U.S. automobile makers. And really what's going on here is the organization is trying to find a way to eliminate any activities that don't contribute to value, i.e. activities that we're really not going to get paid for. And we've talked about this before in supply chain management. We want to minimize everything that doesn't address the voice of the customer. And at the very same time, we're trying to do it in as efficient a manner as possible. And that means we're going to shorten cycle time. It's going to take less time to get through the process, thereby getting value back into our hands just as soon as possible. So if we do it, it's one of those things, when we pull it off the right way, we're doing more in terms of supply chain delivery with less resources. And if lean techniques are adopted and deployed properly, not only are we doing more with less, we're doing it more quickly. And so we're doing that in less time. Can't beat that equation at all, doing more with less in less time. And that's really the foundation of lean techniques as we're going to study them. Now, the foundational techniques really derive from something known as the 5 S's. 5 S's, and you see them here with their Japanese terms. I'm not going to try and pronounce them because I'm sure I won't do justice to it. But the approach, when you think about it, is really trying to organize our work so that we're ready, materials are available, and the workspace is as clean, appropriate, and well set up as possible. So our workers can get through the techniques, through the activities just as quickly as possible, this idea of efficiency. And so the 5 S's involve sorting materials ahead of time so items are readily available in their proper place and we don't have to go searching for them. Set in order means that not only they're in their proper place, they're in their proper sequence and easily accessible by the worker, thereby minimizing time that we have to spend trying to get to them. Shine, the third S, is the idea of a clean workspace, that it is free of obstructions, good lighting, everything's available to the worker with plenty of room to move around so that we can move efficiently without obstruction again. Standardizing is the idea that once we get the work area set up and we have things in place, we also want to make sure that we formalize how we work through that work area so that workers do the same thing as often as they can, time after time, and thereby increase consistency. So we have a more consistent product. And then the final S is the idea of sustaining, and that is once we have a system set up that seems to be delivering outcomes as efficiently as possible, we want to make sure workers understand how to do that. So we're going to train. We want to make sure that we understand when problems arise, so communicate. And we want to make sure we organize it so that it can be repeated. In standardization, we get the consistency we're looking for. Organization suggests that we want to make sure that throughout the entire organization we're able to repeat the steps over time. And if we can pull that off, that really sets the foundation for lean processes, whether in a manufacturing environment, service environment, healthcare environment. Now there are other ones we can think of. We started to speak a little bit about some of the Kanban approaches and that sort of thing. So, visual controls, everything we're doing is in plain sight. So if there's a problem, it's easily addressable. This idea of efficient layout. Think of the organization and the workspace ahead of time so we can organize the workspace most efficiently to pull product and activity through in the least possible time. Again, this idea of shortening cycle time. Pull production, we don't want to deliver materials upstream to the next workplace until they're needed. To the extent they're left there before they're needed, that's wasteful because it's what's known as standing around time, one of the mudas we're trying to eliminate. Single minute exchange is the concept of changeovers, and we have to change tooling or readjust a line because a product a new product has to be moved through the system. We want to make that changeover time just as efficient as possible. So we practice changeovers to make sure we can do it as quickly as possible. Total productive maintenance, we've designed a nice workspace. We've got things set up the way we want. We want to make sure we maintain it so that the productive capacity, machining, logistical tools are up and running when we need them. So maintain them on an ongoing basis. Source inspection, we want to make sure that when something is done in the first stage of a process, it's inspected to make sure that not only is it delivered when it's needed to the next step, but it's in good order. The product can be used. So source inspection, make sure it's good before it goes to the next step. And then finally, the idea of Kaizen, or continuous improvement. And this really is the linkage that we see when we start to think about Lean Six Sigma. This idea of no matter how good the process is, we want to continually evaluate it, and we want it to be open to evaluation from all members of the team so we can continue to improve the output. And in this way, if we find a way to get an advantage through lean approaches, if we continue to improve it, it keeps us in a competitive advantage. So Kaizen, continually improving all the processes by examining them in detail to see how we can improve them. And again, that's the link to Six Sigma. The most common occurrence we see now is that we don't necessarily think of Six Sigma or Lean as necessarily two different approaches. And GE is probably as aggressive as anybody right now in pushing forward in what's known as Lean Six Sigma. And that really is the attempt to integrate both the focus on maintaining consistent output, eliminating variability in processes whenever we can, and that's the hallmark of Six Sigma, as well as trying to accomplish those processes with as few resources as possible in as little time as possible, and that's Lean. Now the idea of Lean Six Sigma is when we look at these activities or look at these processes that we're going to try and study from a Six Sigma standpoint or from a Lean standpoint, we should look at them for both. Look for both outcomes. Less variability, less time, less resources. And if we can pull that off, the outcome should give us the ability to respond to the voice of the customer. That is, provide the value they seek with the fewest possible resources and in the shortest amount of time. Less variability, less rework, less resources committed in a shorter period of time. Reduced cycle time gets the value, the compensation for our value back just that much more quickly. So that becomes kind of the Lean Six Sigma portion of quality. We'll pick up the conversation just a little bit when we get back together. I want to talk just a bit about what's known as a Baldrige approach. It's a little bit different, and then we'll wrap up our conversation of quality management. So I hope this helped, at least in terms of interpreting what we're trying to accomplish with Lean.